Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to live and thrive from your values? Well, we got a show for you. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls. You can find that at giantsandsmalls.com. Go to Facebook, join us. We're a tribe of
.com.
giants on Facebook. You can eat your Uncrustable, hang out with us, do whatever you need to do in your life to, I
Drink
don't
a
know,
Capri Sun.
drink a Capri Sun.
Yeah.
Um, you can do all kinds of things on the tribe of giants and find a lot of people that'll help you and support you and love you for who you are. So you can also find us on YouTube. We're just about everywhere except for Farmers Only. So
Yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Nick,
Yeah.
do you mind introducing our guest?
Not at all, man. We've got Dr. Taylor Suval. Suval, or how do I say your last?
Suval is appropriate,
Suval.
but a lot of people say Suval. I just take it however it comes.
Yeah, we had Tabitha on, and here I am asking again. Suval. So I'll say it right. So he's
Perfect.
first a family man and a chiropractor second. So he was raised in Wyoming and has spent the last few years traveling the country to serve and learn from some of the best chiropractors in the world. So he recently relocated back to Salt Lake City, or to the area anyway, to found Radical Chiropractic Company with his wife Tabitha and their three kids. So are they working there?
No, they
No.
don't work there yet.
Yeah,
We have actually thought about it in the future, but right now they're just around.
just hanging out watching cartoons like my
Yeah,
kids, right? That's perfect. So you found your passion for chiropractic when you were serving a local chiropractic practice as a licensed massage therapist. Is that right?
that's exactly right. Against my
And
will.
against your will.
I learned about chiropractic against my will. That's right. He forced it on me.
Yeah, that's funny, man. And then he went back on to attend the prestigious Parker University of Chiropractic in Dallas, where he received a doctorate degree and earned his advanced proficiency certification as torque release practitioner. That's not a mouthful at all, man.
Sorry
I
about
think
that.
it. I think if we keep interacting, this
He,
will be the
apo-
longest
he
bio
apologizes for
ever.
the title. Sorry they made the title like that.
I am a TRPPUCD
Yeah.
AP. Yeah, I just made that up. So he's a member of the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, has also received his Webster certification, an advanced certification that instructs doctors how to specifically care for prenatal and postpartum mothers. And in his time away from the practice, he loves to go hiking, hit the gym, and admittedly spends most of his waking hours supporting his kids and their extracurricular activities. I had a hard time getting that word out, that
Yeah.
extracurricular.
We have a hard time thinking about it every morning. We have to get up every
Yeah.
Saturday. We have to give up.
It's like the Uncrustables. You're giving up the crust, you're giving up your life. It's no
That's
big
right.
deal. Yeah. Welcome to the show, man. It's good to
Thanks
have
for
you
having
here.
me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're going to dive in. So we have a goal with this, and we may or may not hit it. So that's not important. What matters is we want to demonstrate in your life the journey that you went through, the mindset that you created to create where you are today. And so we always go back in time to a point where maybe you were unconscious, maybe you were automated, where maybe you felt you didn't have a say in your life. Life was just happening to you. Do you have something that comes up as you hear that?
Absolutely, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm jumping over a lot of things, but I was in college. It was my first year of college. Um, I guess technically my second year, the beginning of my second year of college, and my father ended up passing away, and that ended up being a big deal. He, in my life, obviously had passed away, but he had remarried a lady named Beverly, so my stepmom, when I was 17, and things took a wild turn for me that I wasn't expecting. Right, she turned very hostile, kicked me out of the house, sold my dog. Um, did all kinds of weird stuff. And then
Sounds like
I was only
Cinderella type thing.
it was really weird. I found out she had a lot of resentment, I guess, against me.
Wow.
But anyway,
Oof.
and so then I was only in college at the time because my dad was like, "Go to college. That's what you do." So now that I didn't have a reason to be there, I didn't really want to be in college. I didn't have any skills. My dad, who was my support system, had passed away, and so I was just sort of like nowhere to go, nothing to do, um, and it really was a time of flux, right? Um,
Yeah. That's an awakening, right? I could imagine some of the stuff going through your head at that time. Like you're just all of a sudden from an easy life somewhat to it shifts. This one relationship, everything shifts. You're out of the house, your dog is gone. Is this a country song? Is this
yeah, I know, right?
It would make a good one.
yeah.
It
My
was,
my stepmom moved in, my dog moved out.
yeah,
No, I don't mean to make fun of there, but to really just connect
yeah,
with what's going on. I mean, it's intense.
You have to grow up quick in that
Yeah,
scenario.
yeah. And I had really no idea what I wanted to do with my life or any skills to do anything. Really at that point, I was in the guard at that point, but I didn't really want to the Air National Guard. But I didn't really want to be there. The skills that I learned didn't really transfer very well to anything in real life. So I ended up like sleeping on my friend's couch, no money, eating his MREs that he had stacked up. He's, he doesn't
Ugh.
want to support me. He's just
MREs are not great. BT
yeah.
dub.
And so I just had to, all of a sudden was just forced to sort of, well, you have to work, right? So I had to get a
yeah,
job somewhere, try to figure that out, and was just scrambling.
yeah. Did you feel a lot of insecurity in that? A lot of fear, a lot of doubt?
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I had no purpose, right? I had no goals anymore.
Okay.
Um, I had no one to rely on for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, not really. Like my friends a little bit, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
He's trying to live his life. He can't support me. And it was just really, it was a scary time.
Yeah. What about grief? So the idea that there you had some ideals maybe of how your life would maybe play out, and then all of a sudden you're thrown into something different. So there's a gap between what you had in mind and where you're at. And so that dissonance that comes up, that sadness around what's lost, the relationship maybe you had with your dad, your dog being gone, all that. Like, can you speak to that? How did that impact you?
Well, so, that was I'm dealing with that alongside everything else, right? I'm trying to grieve for my dad and my dog, right? All
Yeah,
those things. And so, and coincidentally, my mother, who was also, I had to deal with her on top of that, right? She fell apart. And they weren't together; they'd been separated, but she still fell apart. So she was like depressed and had issues going on. So I was
yeah,
trying to do stuff while also simultaneously trying to deal with my own sense of like grief and loss and did all of it pretty poorly if I look back on it and being honest.
It's really
um,
like
no
in
lie
that
about it.
scenario, like how do you know like you're doing the best you can or trying to
Yeah,
figure out like
well, that's true.
how you can't
Hindsight's
really
always
fault yourself
2020.
for that, right?
That's true. It's not like yes, that is true, but still, measurably could have done much better now, right? Looking back, obviously,
for sure, for sure. You're way more equipped now.
sure, absolutely.
Um,
Did you
what I
have a
what
mustache like that back then too? Because that's a
No, I did
legit
not.
mustache. That's legit.
Thank you.
Just wanted to point
that
it
would
out
have
for everyone.
that would have helped.
Yes,
Yeah,
that
So,
would have helped immensely.
that's right. Kept me on the straight and narrow.
well, so like staying here in the difficulty for a minute because it's often forgotten. You move past this and you don't revisit it, right? You don't go back in time to that space. So as much as you're able, like tapping into what did you do to kind of cope? How did you manage to kind of reestablish and reconstitute yourself?
Well, it actually took a little while.
Okay.
Um, so I ended up scrambling for a job. Right, I got a job working for McAfee,
Yeah.
tech support. There was a little center in the town. So I applied and got hired on there. So that was a job that I could earn some money, but
Yeah.
that was no future there. And so I was looking and trying to figure out what can I do to for something. Right, I have to do something.
Yeah.
Um, And then so I tried a couple of different things. I actually got my Class A CDL, or and was driving trucks for a little while, but I hated that.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
terrible. And so I was just trying to do a couple of these just jobs. I was just picking jobs, trying to get
Wait.
hired.
We got to go back 1 second. But with the CDL, were you like on the road driving big trucks? Like,
Yep.
did you have all the lingo? We got some lingo we can.
Oh, I couldn't tell you now. I did not do it very long. I hated it. It was
Oh
awful.
no,
I also didn't
that's
do a
the
very
only
good job.
reason I would get into like driving big trucks. It's just so I
That's
could
right.
talk like them too. That's it.
We got Smokies up ahead, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What's your 20 over?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's your 20 over?
If you're into that, Google that because it's funny listening to some of the things they say. It's great. So anyway,
And
it's a
so
whole nother language.
I was really struggling trying to get through that, figuring out what I wanted to do. I ended up, like I said, my mom ended up falling into a pretty bad depression. She wasn't handling everything well. So I ended up moving up to Oregon where she was
Yeah.
to try and support and take care of her, which was I could hardly take care of myself, let alone take care of her. But just doing jobs and trying to scrounge by literally.
There's a this is a weird thought, but if you'll play with me on it,
Got a
the
lot of
thought of
weird thoughts, but this one's
there's this
real
weird
weird.
worm. I don't know if you've ever seen it, and it spits out this white like web, and it just goes everywhere. I don't know if you've seen that on YouTube.
I
In
think I
my
might have seen it, but I
nightmares,
couldn't speak about it. Yeah.
It would give you nightmares. It's crazy. But what I hear is in the uncertainty of your life, you were just like, I'm not saying that you were a worm in any way. You were putting out your feelers, right? Like you're putting them out in all these directions. And that's what we do when we go into uncertainty. We start, some people shut down, right? They just shut down and they can't do anything because they get overwhelmed by the situation. But in your case, you were putting out feelers and trying to hold yourself together. You're trying to hold your family together, hold yourself together mentally, which I can imagine how difficult that was. And at the same time, trying different things to see what aligns with you, which when you're uncertain and you don't know where you're going in the future, that would be pretty common is to put out feelers and start putting energy into different things to see where you want to go.
I was
Does that
so
sound
unsure
right?
where that was going to
Yeah.
go, Nick.
Well,
Yeah.
that's looking.
Did I pull that around? Like,
Oh,
Yeah.
that was
Well,
perfect.
it does make a lot of sense because I've sort of something I've sort of learned is when you're trying to figure that out, or something that like I try and tell my kids a little bit is like, it's okay to do something badly, just pick something, right? And then even if you do it badly and you're like, well, that was terrible, I could have done a lot better, you've learned something and you've oriented yourself a tiny bit, right? And you say, and then you can try again and try again until you sort of focus in and narrow down a little bit, right? It takes time,
yeah,
unfortunately. But if you don't start somewhere, you're never going to get there.
yeah. And that's the way out. I mean, really, it opens the doors, even truck driving, right? You hate it, but it shows you like that's the path I don't want to go down. So it
Right.
has you pull back energy and go down a new path. But you wouldn't have known that, right? Unless you
Right.
went down and put energy into it.
Exactly.
And so I think it's important to teach kids, and adults too, the mindset of, hey, when things go south, start doing something. Get out there and get active on something. I don't know what's going to work for you any more than you know what's going to work for you.
Right. Well, it's like
But
they say,
nothing,
how do you eat an
yeah,
elephant?
yeah, I don't, but
Right. You eat it one bite at a time, right? You got to do
right,
something.
yeah,
I was going to
And
say you Traeger.
Traeger, smoke it,
yeah, brisket.
Yeah.
slow roast it. Yeah, it's true though. Some days that's all you can do is a single step, and so as you started waking up to this, you probably had some tools to kind of get yourself anchored back into you, or you found tools, or you looked for tools. Is that accurate to kind of help you feel at peace?
Well, it took a while, because things
Okay.
were, I ended up taking care of my mom, and I ended up
Okay.
having to take care of her, so she was like a dependent a little bit,
Yeah.
an adult dependent in a lot of ways, and so everything that I wanted to do had to be like carrying her along, and so
Yeah.
it made things difficult. Um, and so it took, a couple of years of fumbling around and working different jobs, construction, cable technician, lots of different things, until I sort of figured out to go to school and become a massage therapist. That's sort of been in our family a little bit peripherally. massage and sort of massage therapy on this is sort of around. And so it was something that I sort of enjoyed doing, and I decided to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and that really sort of put me on a path that gave me something to focus on that I actually kind of enjoyed doing. I was good at it. Um, I was able to earn some money, and sort of that was like the beginning of sort of where I felt like anchored and where I could kind of push off a little bit and try and do some things other than just floundering.
Yeah. Do you notice in your work now that a lot of people in the release work, especially, a lot of it goes back to development. A lot of it goes back to, and I don't know if you talk to people as you're working on them and things come up, or you just notice as you're working somebody's body that there's release that
So
happens.
when I was doing massage, I don't really do massage very much anymore.
Yeah,
But when
yeah,
I did, yeah, you have the somato-emotional release. Um, what happened? People, you store things, and then sometimes, awkwardly for them, sometimes things just come out, right? You release a trigger point or something, some knot they have, or some things that are going on, and all of a sudden they have this flood of emotion
yeah,
that they've
yeah,
been like hanging on to. It's not every person all the time, but it does happen.
yeah.
And
I've heard that.
so it's interesting when that happens, because it's a lot of times to the person it's completely unexpected. It's no way related to anything that's happening, right?
Yeah,
um, they're relaxing, getting a massage, doing whatever sports massage or whatever's happening, and then all of a
yeah,
sudden they have this flood of emotion of like, I remember when my, you know, dad passed away 4 years ago, or whatever the emotion is,
right.
and then they'll start crying or something, and you're like, what's going on? Are you okay? Maybe talk to them a little bit when that happens. Um,
Yeah.
and so it is interesting when those things that is a real thing.
I want to hang on to this for a minute. I have a client that did that, and that happened for her. And there was a release that was there, and a lot of I think it's Dr. Gabor Mate talks about grief and trauma, and that a lot of people with trauma never got to fully grieve what was lost. They never got to reconcile, and so
That's
in a
exactly what
situation like
Lori had
that,
said here too, is that she'd never properly grieved the loss of her brother.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and it's really just slowing down with and closing the gap between what is and what was lost, right? And even in your situation, looking at your history, there's a lot between even the ideal that you had for yourself and what happened, right? And there's a grieving of that gap between those two things.
Sure.
And I think it's important that people slow down with that and really sit with their grief, because we just move on, we just get busy, right?
Right.
We avoid it.
Or bury it or
Yeah.
suppress
Well,
it.
it's a lot easier sometimes, right, than having to work through it and experience it and understand it. It takes
Oh
the
yeah.
sucks, right? Sometimes.
Oh, it sucks. It's not
Yeah.
fun. I've had clients tell me to F off during that process, because it's hard. There's some heavy emotions that come up in it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you imagine when you were younger, probably just enjoying life, and then you start projecting out into the unknown of, I don't know what I'm going to do. Here I am where I am. I'm not going out of this world, so I'm going to stay here and just keep working, right?
Right.
And so if I'm going to do that, I don't know what I'm going to do, so I'm going to try truck driving, I'm going to try this, I'm going to work for McAfee or whoever. And you're trying all these things, and then as you're out there trying all these things, one opens up, and it's called massage, right?
Right.
And it's this thing that you don't know if it's going to be any better than anything else. Probably you just know, I'm going to try everything that sounds interesting, I'm going to go for that. And it's amazing looking at where you are now. That opened the door for everything that followed,
Yep.
right?
Sure
So you
You
did.
want
said
to,
you said it like you accidentally kind of forcibly
Yeah. So
got put into chiropractic. That's how I feel about this too. I'm going to change the whole story of how we met Nick. Maybe like Nick made me do it. He said you have no
happy.
choice.
Bob Ross it, man. Happy
yeah,
little accidents.
that's
Tell
right.
us a little bit about that process, because I've been sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for this
Well,
patient.
so I started working for a doctor in Salt Lake City, Dr. Mark Resetaritz, and he's a very nice guy. He's very a little hippie-ish, right? He wears like Hawaiian shirts and he has earrings, and he's sort of super smiley and cool guy. Um, but so I went. They were hiring a therapist for their office, and I went and applied and got hired, surprisingly. Um, because I didn't feel like I performed well. But anyway, so I got hired. And so I started working there, and he's like, "Hey, I want you to learn about chiropractic. I want you to come and get free care. understand what we're doing, right? Because I didn't really know anything about chiropractic at that time at all. Um, and so he told me that stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't really want to do that. I didn't say that, but that was my attitude. And so, they would schedule me appointments to come in, and I, would cancel them or reschedule them. And, I just like wanted to show up, do my work, and leave. And so, I don't know, 6 weeks or so in after I'd been hired, maybe, he pulls me aside, and the conversation was a little bit longer. And for the
Yeah.
sake of brevity, I'm going to make it short, but he was much nicer than I'm going to make it sound right now. But basically, he said, listen, you're going to be a part of our office or you're not going to be a part of our office. And if you're not, then we have to have a different conversation. What do you want
Wow.
to do?
Wow.
And so, pulled me up on the carpet, right? And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do what you want. I guess I'll learn about it, right? If I have to for my job.
Yeah.
And so I did. I started coming in. I started learning about it. Started getting adjusted, um, and it just literally changed my whole idea and worldview on what it is I wanted to do. And I
Yeah.
decided that I wanted to become a chiropractor. I mean, not right then. It took a little while, but that was when I decided I wanted to be a chiropractor.
And you signed up for it and you did it and you were immediately successful
Oh
and
my
everything
gosh.
was happy
No,
from there on,
it was
right?
horrible.
He's like,
It was yeah, it was absolutely terrible. So, I dropped out of college when my father passed away. And so
Yeah.
I had class, like failed classes and just messed up my college career because I didn't really care about it. So I had a lot of failed classes and stuff that were I had to then try and make up for. But trying to, and at this point in the story, I'm also a single father. So I have my mom that I'm taking care of and my son
Yeah.
while I'm trying to figure out how to get back into school. Well, in order to, go to graduate school, you had to finish undergraduate school. And so I had to figure out, but I couldn't do undergraduate because I had messed up all my transcripts and couldn't get a loan anymore. So I had to fix my grades first before I could qualify for a loan to continue going through school, which is not an easy task, I promise you.
Yeah.
Um, it was a lot and it sucked.
it was like you
Well, so
replayed that for a minute in your mind right there, went back for a second. You're like, ugh.
Oh my gosh, it was just
you
I
just
so
can
start
see the.
much.
crying. It's like,
Ugh.
ugh.
Well, because it's just like, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back for sure, right? You're
Yeah.
trying to work and take care of essentially two dependents, and then go to school, and it's not full time, so it's not like when you're in high school where you just go to class and you're sort of there and you can wrapped up in school, or like right after high school when you go to college. For a lot of people, like college is like their main focus and everything else is sort of peripherally. Well, I had other stuff that was like the main focus, and I had to try and make school also a priority and fit it in, and it was tough.
Man. Like there's probably a lot of surrender because looking forward, I think this is where people get hung up. They have a vision. They don't even have a clear vision. Like they're just going to do this thing and they'll just their vision might be a short-term vision. I'm going to do this course or this certification and that's my goal. And then there's a bit of surrendering in it because that vision might not come around the way you thought it would. Like
Oh, I,
yeah, go
I had
ahead.
this idea that I was going to, like, okay, I'm just going to go back to school full time and sort of work through this, and this is how long it's going to take me. Well,
Yeah.
that quickly learned that was not going to be the case. um, not full time, part time, a couple of classes, sometimes taking just whatever I can manage while still trying to live through life. So this whole process from when I decided I wanted to do it to the end was much longer than 4 years. It was like closer to, I would say, 8 or 10 years if I'm looking back on total time. It was a huge undertaking.
Yeah. I mean,
And
if we were to reread your bio here, people would be like, how did he do that? Right?
one
Because
step at a time,
yeah, yeah, okay.
Triggering an
one
elephant, Nick.
one crawling mountful at a time, just crawling your way along at sometimes. And that was with a lot of
Uncomfortable
steps
here.
back. It's not a straight line. Like a lot of people think it's like just this straight line
Yeah,
or the straight line, right? But it's really
yeah,
like this.
yeah.
And that can be really, every
We
one
use
of
the
those
symbol.
dips.
We use the symbol of a tree. It's like a tree. It's messy. It's bifurcated. It's branched. But as a whole, the tree is successful.
Right.
and that's kind of life too. But
Is-
one small step at a time. What else is coming up? I'll quit cutting you off.
Well, I was just thinking about it. It's like every single one of those dips where you fail or you have some sort of a setback, um, can be devastating, and it's like any single one of those is like, so like I guess so. I have a good friend that I met in high school named Mike, my good friend Mike, and I was talking to him recently, sort of past this journey, and so I was explaining to him that, so I had a number of situations, right? I had to quit school and start again. And anyway, this most recent last time where I finally restarted school again, and I was telling people, hey, I'm back in school, and everyone was like, oh, you're back? I didn't think you were gonna ever do that. I didn't think you're ever gonna go back to school, right, or finish your doctorate, and I had like 3 or 4 people right in a row sort of tell me that. And so I was talking to my friend Mike, and I was like, why do people keep telling me this? This is a weird experience for me. And he's like, he said, Taylor, look at all these, and he started listing them out for me because he's been my friend since high school. All these places where I've fallen or there's a setback. And he's like, every single one of these was a really good reason to quit. And you just had these one after the other. So no wonder you're a bad bet, man. Look at all the failures you had. If I was going to bet, I wouldn't have bet on you. That's why everyone thinks that. And I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. It sounded at first, I was like, oh, he's telling me I'm a bad bet. But what he was trying to say was that if you just look at all the failures, one after the other, after the other, after the other, there was a lot of good reasons not to ever succeed.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of laughed, not in a just because I could relate, because of things that I have gone through, and it's no wonder. Like a family, like they love you, they want to protect you, watch out for you, your friends, and they'll say things like that, like, "Oh man, are you sure?" Like, you know,
Yeah,
college, you weren't so good at college the first go round. Remember that?
right.
They keep reminding you of your past history, and that has that. Nick calls it gravity or weight. All of your past history has that. Sometimes they can say
We
things
don't
lovingly, but it can really
we don't
hurt.
even need them anymore. Like we start doing that to ourselves. Like we'll just pull up all the reasons why we failed. I've
Yeah.
got clients that do that, that they'll just pull up, I can't do it because of this and this and this. And they'll go through the laundry list of reasons, like you said, that they're a bad bet. Right.
Yep.
And
It reminds me of Laban Ditchburn's book, Bet on You. Like there was every reason to not bet on this guy that we know, that amazing man, and coach, where his whole life he was just a wreck, just a train wreck. That's how I'm going to sum it up. Sorry, Laban, love you, buddy, but it was just an entire train wreck until he woke up one day, realized his potential, said, "Nope, today's the day. I'm going to start changing my life." And
Well,
he started betting on himself and believing in himself, and that's when everything started to shift.
well, what was interesting how you just mentioned that was because when my friend Mike said that to me, it really took me by surprise a little bit because this whole time, and looking back over the time that since I'd started going to school to try and finish, um, every single one of those setbacks that I looked at was just like, I didn't look at it like, oh, I failed. I looked at it like, oh, this sucks. How do I fix this and move past this, right? And so when I
yeah,
look
yeah.
back on it compared to how his description of it, my understanding of it was, man, this sucks. How do I have to get around
I
this
love that.
obstacle?
Yeah.
And so it was like it's more about being it's not about racing to the finish line. It's about being a steamroller, right? You just got to keep moving,
Yeah,
right? You just
you're
keep moving.
describing grit, right?
Yeah.
I I
Persistence
just
and
thought of
grit.
Austin Powers, where that steamroller's coming
Yeah,
at the
that's
guy, and
right.
he's not moving
Yeah.
forever. Finally gets run over.
300 feet
Anyway,
down the path, exactly.
Right.
And
So
so
talk
be a
about grit.
steamroller.
How important is that?
well, you know, it's the most important defining characteristic of whether or not you're going to be successful, right?
Yeah.
Statistically, they've
Yep.
shown that. Your willingness to just try again or keep moving forward, right? Or instead of being discouraged and giving up, saying, okay, how do I solve this problem? And it's not always easy, and it's not always immediately apparent, right?
Yep.
Like there were gaps where I had to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? How am I going to solve this problem? Um, but it's not about being able to do it quickly, or it's just, are you willing to keep working at it, right? Because the answers
Yeah.
were not always immediately apparent either. A couple times where I'm like, I don't know how am I supposed to do this? What am I going to do? How am I going to do this?
Yeah.
and you just have to keep, and like that last time where people were like, oh my gosh, you started again. There was like a year of a gap between when I left school and had to come back. And during that time, I had to do other things, right? And it wasn't like I'd given up on my goal, but I had to do other things while trying to figure out how to move forward. And so when I finally figured it out a year later and started again, everyone was like really surprised because they thought I was just done. But I thought to
Yeah.
myself, well, I'm just biding time until I can figure this out. I have to do some other stuff in the meantime, so I'll do that. But
That is a mindset. Holy cow, dude. Because I feel like people want you to quit so that they can stop suffering. Like, right?
right,
Like, can you just, I'm suffering over here, but watching you suffer over there, but it's different. What you're describing is, there's a version of suffering that's painful. And then there's a version of suffering called passion, right? Where
right,
you're willing and you're after this goal and you're relentlessly going after it and you don't know how you're going to do it. Kind of like the Steve Jobs thing. You can't connect the dots looking forward, only backward.
right,
And so here you are going out there and no, I didn't stop. I never stopped. That's the thing is people perceived it as stopping,
right.
but I just pulled back my energy to reframe and re-engage. Like that's a powerful mindset right there.
Sometimes when you get into that phase too, it's like the you talked about the peaks and the valleys, right? The ups
Right.
and the downs.
Yeah.
Sometimes when that becomes your like your when you find your passion. Let me phrase it this way. When you find your passion, when you have the downhill slide, you're like, "Oh yeah, like that hurts so good. Bring it on!" Like because you know that there's growth on the other side of that. You know that there's
Yeah.
something coming, and there's lessons to be learned. And that's kind of what I've seen in your journey is you're like learning that process of like what needs to happen. Why is this happening to me? How can I fix it? How can I grow? Um, what can I learn? Who can I learn from? Like curiosity, right? And
Yeah.
and then that passion of I'm gonna prove everyone wrong. I'm gonna prove to myself that I can do this, and I'm gonna show everybody else that I can do this as well.
And that is interesting because I see a lot of people have that, "Oh, I'm going to prove everybody wrong," and that drives them. That's a motivating factor
Yeah.
for people. Like, oh, they told me I couldn't do it. I'm going to show them.
Right.
Um, and I'm not going to lie. There's a few people that I thought I can't wait to let them know that I've become a doctor. Right. Um,
You mail a copy of your certificate to
yeah.
their house with
With
a
a
But
handwritten letter.
oh, I mean
Dear,
I mean
dear
with a
Jim.
handwritten letter.
but my overall goal for pushing through everything was, in fact, as a side note, coincidentally, we just had this. So while I was still in school, I would have people, instructors or people that were put in a position of authority over us, talk about why you're not going to be successful if you do this type of thing or this model of chiropractic or different aspects. And I was like, you're wrong. And I actually made my wife put in a Google notification for like 3 years, 4 years later, and one of them just popped up so that I could
Oh,
go call them and let them know that I've done it.
oh, that's rad, dude.
Um,
Yeah, really. I've
and so
never
Remember
thought
that
to do
time where
that.
you said this?
Like set
exactly.
a
I don't know
Google
if you remember this, but we
notification.
were in class and you said you weren't going to be successful by doing this. How you doing?
I set a reminder to
I
remind
set
me
a
to tell
reminder to
you
remind me to
that
let
you
you
were
know.
wrong.
That's right.
I think I'm gonna start doing that.
I think I might too. That's
Um,
awesome, dude.
and but so while I was in school, that was never the biggest motivating factor. That was always like, yeah, that might be a little bit of self, aggrandizement to let, hey, I made it, right?
Yeah,
But really my goal was just, I want this thing for my life and for my family, and everything. And that was the driving motivator for everything that I wanted to do, right? Was,
yeah,
one of the biggest things that I saw from when I was working under Dr. Mark was the lifestyle that he had. Him able to go to his kids' games. Him able to, like, I saw him. His dad had some sort of a medical condition at one point, and he was like, "Cancel my week. I'm going to see my dad in Buffalo." And he left that day, like from the office. And not that I want to not be able to work, right? Not that I want to just
yeah, yeah.
cancel, but the freedom to be able to be in control of his life and in his kids' lives. I really, really wanted that. And I saw that and it wasn't the only reason, right? I also loved the work and healing and hands-on healing, a lot of that stuff with chiropractic. I felt fit in right in line with massage that I was already doing. But that was a huge motivator for me. I want that life for my family.
Yeah.
I want to be able to provide that for my family.
See,
Um,
hang on to that because I want to tie a thread through real quick and then we'll come back. So remember where you left off.
sure.
Okay. So the idea when you go into that space of waking up to your world and it's uncertain, right? You're out there putting your feelers out. I just want to make these connections here. You create a vision that initially wasn't your vision around chiropractic, right? You go through the massage and then you get to chiropractors training, and that vision pulls you through the uncertainty.
Yeah.
And then what pulls you through the vision to its becoming objective, becoming real in this world is your legacy, like your value system. So when you are looking at why am I doing this? Well, I want to have the lifestyle. I want to be able to go to my kids' games. These are things that are important to me. A value is simply what's important to you. And so as you created that value system, that made all the surrendering kind of stepping stones rather than blocks, right? Like by having that value anchored in, now as you're creating your vision, anything that's not in alignment with that value system now goes out the window. Yeah, this doesn't serve what I'm trying to create.
Or you can
Because it's
still
not
go
just
Exactly.
the
through it.
vision, it's the alignment, right?
Exactly. It was because I had exactly. You're exactly right. I had the values of what I wanted to achieve, right?
Yeah,
Especially because they were outside of me, which is usually more powerful than for most people than outside, right? Like if you and your friend are sitting somewhere at dinner and some Yahoo comes up and is talking trash, often we're more willing to accept that onto ourselves than we are to allow it to happen to our friend, someone
yeah,
outside of us,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
Like, okay, you can say some stuff about me, that's fine, but don't talk about my friend or my family, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that's often true for a lot of people. And so, at least it is for me, I would say for sure. So I was willing to suffer more to make sure and provide for my family the way I wanted than for myself.
Hmm.
So if it was
Yeah.
just for me, I might have crumbled at some of these points if it was only me. But
I think,
because it was for someone else,
I
and
relate.
I was
yeah.
able to pull myself up and continue going.
I think that's important to highlight because that's really that's where a lot of joy and peace comes from is actually doing things for others because we definitely have to constitute ourselves and put ourselves together so that we can do that and have the mindset to go out there and do those things, but there's not really much fulfillment in life until we start serving, and doing things for others. I'm with you. I think people fight harder for others than they do for themselves. And so why not use that as a value system to anchor you in while you create what you're creating? I think it's a great way to go.
Yeah, and obviously, hindsight's always 2020, and
Yeah,
becoming a single father is probably not the an ideal that most people should strive for. But
yeah,
it did, as hard as it was, to have to deal with that in addition to life, right?
yeah.
It did pull me and it was a way for me to strive and focus and continue pushing forward. So, you know,
That's interesting. Like I know I'd be happy in a tent in the mountains. I'd be I'd be good. But because of my kids, and at one time when I was married, my ex, it was that really pushed me to grow in ways that I probably wouldn't have done for myself because I'm pretty easygoing. Yeah, I don't need much.
right. Yeah, give me a, 100 square foot room and internet access and food, and
Yeah.
I'll hang out in there and be, you know what I mean?
I like it.
Well,
Internet
dude,
access was on the like the top
Yeah.
survival thing.
I gotta have YouTube, you know what I mean?
Not
What are
the
you gonna
cheap
do in there?
Wi-Fi. We need some.
Yeah,
guys,
landline.
this is
Yeah.
what men are like without wives or partners, dude. We're like, yeah, we're good. Like in a small room with a TV and some food. I'm
A lawn
golden.
chair, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Doesn't even have to be a really nice one. Just
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
absolutely. It's
that I think, the value system is so huge because you start to really align with what's important to you. And then, beliefs come off the idea that that's what you hold dear based on what's important to you. So it's like what you've experienced, and you hold that onto that as an experience of how you see life, basically, and how you project into life and predict into life. And so those stories and experiences, whether they're useful or not useful, it doesn't matter. A belief doesn't care. It's just a belief.
right.
And a lot of it depends on what we value, and just being able to anchor that in really makes the hard times easier because you know why you're doing it and you know where you're going,
That's
right?
right. Just like I always, just like I said, when I was thinking back, when my friend Mike was like, "Yeah, you failed. Look at all these times where you failed or we're gonna quit," and I looked at it like, no, like I never thought of it that way. I always thought of it like, this sucks. How do I move past this hurdle?
Yeah,
Not I've like reached a stopping point, but just that this is a uncomfortable situation that I have to figure out how to get around.
yeah.
And so that mindset, is huge.
That's
Yeah.
what my goal is. All I need in my backpack is an
I'm
Xbox, a chair, some munchies,
That's right.
and a tarp. Right, cover 'em. Yeah, so if I definitely want to get into more of your philosophy here because you've now built up a successful career. That it's not like that process that you went through to create where you are is over. Now
Yep.
it's more like, I think of Roger Bannister. He broke the 4 minute mile in the last 70 years, I think 60 years. They've shaved off 17 seconds from that 4 minute mile. So it's like 3:43, right?
Okay.
That's fast, but it didn't happen in a big chunk like the 4 minute mile was. But as
Right.
soon as he broke it, all these people started breaking the 4 minute mile because they didn't think it was possible. But as soon as he broke it, then it was. And then it became this incremental improvement. Like it wasn't big gaps closing because in our
Right.
lives, often you'll see this big closing of the gap, and then you don't have another big closing of the gap in your life. You start fine tuning,
Right.
right? And so you go through the same process of waking up to your situation, basically. You create an awareness around it. You might have some judgments that come up. You might grieve that it's not what you had in mind. And
Right.
then you find gratitude for what is there. And then you go into the uncertainty, you start putting your feelers out. And then as you put those feelers out, you create your vision. And then you anchor into your why you're doing it. And that helps you navigate the surrender and the nurturing of the creation, right?
Yep.
But more on the tune of fine tuning, right?
Right.
Can you talk about what that means to you or what you hear in
Well,
that?
so we've only open at our location for a few months, and so that's
Yeah,
what I think about when you talk about that, because it's sort of like getting through school and like graduating was like a huge hurdle, right? They put so much nonsense, you know, inside of this process that you have to deal with for the sake of, because someone said so. That's just ridiculous. You finally
the book of someone said so. That should be a book.
And so
Yeah,
you finally do all that, and you're like, oh, I finally did it. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. Now I'm just starting. That was just like the first, like, you have to do that before you get started. That's just before you can even start, you have to do that.
yeah,
And so, then we had to, go through all the process of starting a business, right? Getting a business loan, going through the process of finding a space, building the space out.
yeah,
Construction costs are high. Things are taking longer right now, all that stuff. And so
yeah,
so now it's a whole nother, like, now we look ahead and say, what do we want to do? Where do we want our business to be? And how do we get there? And we're at the very beginning of this whole process again, is what it feels like a little bit for me,
yeah, yeah,
except now, like, just like you said, it's much finer tuned, right? I know exactly what we're trying to do. We're just trying to make little adjustments as opposed to wide adjustments.
yeah, yeah.
set up
And you
on
know the direction you're going this time around.
Right.
Uh, Townsend Wardlaw, he was a mentor of mine. He said, it's like pulling weeds. You've got this beautiful lawn out there and it's green, but part of that green is the weed, right? The weeds are the weeds. I don't know, are or is. We'll get the grammar right here. But he says you get to the point that you don't see the weeds anymore, so you really have to zoom in and start looking for more weeds. You start looking and searching out weeds so that you can start pulling them. And in our lives, the way of creating mastery in our lives is simply that: is we are constantly looking for ways that we feel small or areas where there's a gap or in, and then closing that, right?
Right.
So now you've got a direction though, like where you're going. Now it's fine tuning within that direction, right?
Exactly. Like, our business is going, and we're it's moving, but
Yeah,
we're fine tuning parts of it, right? Maybe how we advertise, or the different ways that we advertise, or how do we, um, maybe systems or procedures inside of the office to make it more efficient, or who do we go out and talk to and connect with, and all that stuff is like little things inside of the businesses moving forward, you know?
Yeah. Taylor, let me ask you this. How do you manage anticipation? I'm going to set you up on this so you can
Okay.
think about it, okay? Like a kid on Christmas, they've got all this anticipation about what they're going to get, right? They wake up Christmas morning, they open their package, and it's not that, right?
Right.
And so you have this disappointment with this misalignment with what you anticipated and what actually came, right?
Right.
Now in your business, when people are out there projecting and working, they have this anticipation about how it's going to play out. I picture on the Christmas story, the kid turns in his paper and she writes A plus 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 all around the room, right?
That's the best.
Like that's how we imagine our activity is going to turn out.
Right.
And then it's the shoot your eye, right?
Exactly. Red
Yeah,
Ryder BB gun.
yeah. So how do you manage disappointment? How do you manage despair?
So I learned, I learned this skill, I would say earlier, where I learned to like have a goal, and then I have two goals, a high and a low, right?
Okay.
Like I guess a low goal and then like a stretch goal, if you want to look at it that way, right? And
Yeah.
so, like the minimum that I need or want, and then like anything more than that would be great.
And your ideal, like this would be beautiful if this
Right.
happened.
That's the idea. What do I think is absolutely reasonable and minimum that I can achieve that I need in order to continue on the path, right?
Mm.
And so whenever I look at goals, I sort of have started, and it's not always directly like written out like that, but I sort of have this idea of high and low.
Yeah.
And so
I like that. Yeah.
The low is what I think is like I said, as low as reasonably achievable, right? That's going to continue moving me on the
Yeah.
path.
Yeah.
So as long as I get at least that,
Keeps you in the game, right?
right, then
Yeah.
we can keep playing, right?
Yeah.
And so then I plan everything around, is all this going to at least, I think, be able to get me there? I mean, I plan for more, right? You don't plan for the low, you plan for the high. You aim for high, and then if you miss big, you're still in the range, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you aim high with the expectation of low, and then if you fall, you're happy, or you can
Okay.
continue moving forward.
In evolutionary theory, that is exactly what nature does with every creature. It like has this broad spectrum, like this ideal, but there's a minimum threshold for survival and adaptability. And it's like nature plays within that realm where there's adaptation. And at a minimum, all it takes is this to be a part of the game, right?
Right.
And I think as humans, we judge ourselves as failing because we're not living up to the highest expectation or ideal. Yet all it really takes is this minimum threshold for us to be successful in life. I mean, look around you. Look how many people are actually moving toward their goals or surviving in life. And you're like, how the hell is that happening? Right?
Well, and it's hard to see the forest for the trees sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
Even I have this days when me and my wife talk and we complain or we're upset or whatever about the business or things that are happening or how we want things to be better or different. But it's like an avalanche, right? If you look at like, say there's a huge avalanche that happened, say at noon, right? And everyone's watching it happen from the lodge, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, look at all that snow. It's massive. It's crazy, right? Well, if you go back an hour before that, that one snowflake that fell on top wasn't anything, right? And then the one after it wasn't really anything. And the
Yeah.
one after it wasn't really anything until finally there was the one, and then there's the avalanche. And so it's like but there was never going to be the avalanche without each of those snowflakes,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's real easy sometimes to lose the big picture, right? Because you're like,
Yeah.
well, that didn't really do anything. I did all this work and that did nothing. Well, it might seem like nothing, but you have to have that foundation before you get the avalanche,
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's this huge like movement in your life, and people are like, oh, overnight success.
Right.
If
Yeah.
if overnight you mean like 13, 20 years
Yeah.
of success,
If you
yeah,
mean
then
overnight by 2 decades, then yeah, you're right on.
if we're measuring the entire history of mankind,
In
yeah,
the
I could tell you,
universal scheme.
right?
Yeah.
Ryan, you shared a video the other day about the treasure hunter. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Mel Robbins. Mel Robbins? Is that right?
She's the
Uh,
motivational
no,
speaker.
not Mel. Who was it? Yeah.
I don't
So
remember the name,
guy
but
goes out every single day treasure hunting in Florida, right? For the Spanish Gold,
Okay.
and they dive. They have a team. They dive every single day for years and years and years and years. What was it, Nick? 20 something years. They're
I think
diving
almost 30.
almost
Yeah.
30 years. They're diving day after day after day, but every single day he would say, "Today's the day." And then eventually there was
Was
the
the day.
day.
Yeah.
Yep. And they found, millions and millions and millions and millions
Over
of
a half
dollars.
a billion dollars of treasure.
Is that right? Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Like
crazy.
I mean, that's what you're describing here is the snowflake, the forest, the
It was
single
Mel
branch
Mel
on the tree.
Fisher.
Mel Fisher.
Mel Robbins is good too, but
Fisher
Mel
makes
Fisher.
sense for the ocean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it
Like,
does, doesn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
But you
Go
never
Google that.
even on the side of working on your vision, it's hard to remember sometimes you're putting in that snowflake, you're putting down that root, that single step. Like you are the one not counting it on the outside, but the one placing it. Like,
Well, it's hard too because a lot of times the snowflakes are failures that seem like, they set you back. And you're like, how is
yeah,
this setting me? How is this setback positive in any way? But just like you
mm,
said, as long as you have, learn from some things, figure out how to overcome it. Like there's, life keeps putting lessons in front of you until you figure it out.
yeah.
And some of those are hard,
Dang
unfortunately.
it.
We use the symbol of the X, right? The X is exactly like this. It's where you are. And with the mindset that you're describing, it doesn't matter where you are. What you know is that you can do something with it, that you can create from there. So if this is where you are, then I know I can do something with that. Rather
Yeah.
than thinking that, oh, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, kind of a thing. No, you're exactly where you need to be. Just work from there.
Yeah. You are a giant. You are a creator. You can
Yeah.
do that at any point in time.
Well, it's very easy to look at other people and be like, oh my gosh, look at this. This
Oh
kid
man.
was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Everything was paid for. He has no student loan debt. All this, look at all the benefits. And why couldn't I have those things? Well,
Yeah.
if you had those things, you wouldn't be where you are because they're what make you, right? It's,
Yeah.
it's, I've looked back and like, I would have liked to have pipelined through school and be where I'm at 15 years earlier. If in like a fantasy world where I could go back and do it all again, knowing what I know now, but then I wouldn't know what I know now because I would never have those same
Yeah.
experiences.
You wouldn't have had to stretch, right? Like
Right,
there'd be
exactly.
no growth.
What would you tell yourself if you could go backwards in time? What advice, knowing what you know now,
If I could, if
what
I
would
could
you say
guide
to
my
yourself?
younger self, I would just put me on the path to chiropractic sooner, right? Because
Yeah.
that is being able to know what I know now. I would like to have already been doing this 15 years, right, as opposed to being a little bit later in life. So if I could have all the same knowledge, then yeah, obviously I would just start sooner, right? That'd be great. But you know, it took me a long time to understand that life's not fair, and that's just the way that it is. You can be upset about it, or if you want, but it doesn't change anything, right? Some people are dealt a better card of hand, dealt a better hand of life than you are. That's just the way that it is. And you just have to can move forward, just like you said, X is where you are. You just have to make the best of where you're at. What do I want to do? How do I get there? And break it down into a couple of steps or more, depending on how far out your goal is, and just work towards the one at a time, right? How do I get to the next step,
Yeah.
right? If you look at it like, how do I go from here to becoming a doctor? Well, that's a hard jump, right? There's a ton of stuff you have to do in between there,
Yeah.
right? Well, the first thing you have to do is go to undergraduate school, right? Graduate college, right? Well, how do I do that? Well, do you have your GED? Did you graduate high school? No, I dropped out. Well, then that's, so you just start taking it back, right? One step at a time, and that wasn't me, but I'm just using that as an example. Um, and so you have to start wherever you're at and just take one step toward the next incremental goal, right? And it's not always in a line, like connecting the dots, like you said. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's real messy, right? But you just have to do what you have to do, right? And on the
Sometimes it's
way of,
a shotgun of dots.
right,
Like,
you
yeah.
know, if you're 19 and you have to work and pay for yourself and you have to live and you don't have any money and you don't have any skills to get a good job, but you decided you want to become a doctor. Well, the first thing is you have to go back to school. Well, that sucks. So you have to pay and save up money, and there's things that you have to do, and maybe you have to figure out, well, I need better skills so I can make more money so that I can take enough time off so that I can go to school, right? Maybe there's like these like side steps that you have to take, right? Where it's not really
Yeah.
directly in line. Well, I have to get a skills so I can make more money.
Like
So then I
a
can take time off
fractal.
to come back. Yeah.
It is a fractal. Yeah. Well, the grit too, Taylor, that you're describing here. I mean, if I were a teenager or a kid starting over, I'd want to know like it's going to take grit. You're going to have to stick with things. You're going to have to get out there and do things that are uncomfortable. You're going to have to go into the unknown. You're going to have to deal with loss and sadness. You're going to have to give up, not give up, but deal with anxieties about the unknown future, dread.
Understand that it's okay to fail.
Yeah,
That's huge.
it's a huge part of the growth, right? And
That's
it
true.
doesn't matter, like Amy right here,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how old you are or how wise you think you are, there will always be some area of your life where you feel that uncertainty, where you feel that anticipation, where you feel sadness, where you feel anxiety. Like it's never over unless you just give up, right? Unless you just decide this is it for me, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's exactly right. And some people do that, right? Some people just say, you know what, I'm just happy where I'm at.
they do.
I don't want to suffer anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah,
But you know, everything is suffering is required to get what you want to some degree,
yeah. I,
some
I
amount.
I'm going to go through a course here in July with Daniel Alexa, and he coaches dead people. Well, by dead people, he means those that are dead in their life, and I'm not dead in my life, but I love the learning of it because there's this constant drive in me to grow, to create. Like somebody labeled me as relentless. Yeah, I'm relentless. And so part of learning from a coach like that is the idea that um, I don't want to feel dead and stop my life where I'm at right now. Does that make sense? So I don't want this to be it.
Makes sense to me completely. I'm
Yeah.
100% on board.
Yeah. So I just think, for those that are listening, is remember, like, this is a part of the creation. Is how you're thinking up here, how you're feeling in here is vital to what you're creating. Because if you feel and think that you can't do it, then that's what's going to show up in your life.
Well, just like, right, whatever you think about is what shows up, right? You think about red cars, and you're gonna see red
Yeah.
cars on the road, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And every situation can be generally be thought of as like a good or a bad, right? You go to the
Yeah.
store because you're late and you got to get something from the store, and you're driving and there's a parking spot halfway down. That's the only one you could find. You can think to yourself, this sucks, man. Look at how far away this parking spot is. Or you can think to yourself, man, thank goodness it's not all the way at the back of the parking lot. Look how close this is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
However you look at it is how you're going to see it. And you opportunities are there when you're looking for them. You
Mm.
know, um, and you just have to. It's a process, right? It's not a moment in time. It's a process that you have to work in order to see the
Yeah.
results.
It's a willingness to work on what you're working on with the openness to something you weren't looking for showing up while you're working on that thing. We
That's
call it
right.
serendipity. I think that's where that word came from. Um, but yeah, if you're open to it, you'll see it. If you're not open to it, you won't see it. Even if the greatest opportunity in the world
That's right.
knocked on your door, you wouldn't even see it because of your unwillingness to see more than what you're working on. So I think that's a challenge for people is work on what you're going to work on, but surrender how it comes about because it might come from somewhere you're not even considering.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan, do you have some other thoughts here?
As you talked about all of the I'm going to call them bullies, naysayers, all the people in your life that said you can't do this or gave you all the reasons why, or even in school, like the maybe the professors or the quote unquote experts, right, that
Right.
said that model can't work. It's never going to work. I think of you as the Roger Bannister of chiropractic, where you went in and little by little you started breaking down some of those belief barriers, not only for yourself, like you knew that, hey, this is a possibility, so I'm going to go after it. And as you started stepping forward, you started to grow, just like Rit does in the book, where you started to believe in yourself and believe in the things that you were doing, and gain understanding and knowledge and wisdom from others that had done some of the things that you wanted to do. Some of it was just flat being a pioneer and going down a trail to see if it would work. And that's where the fractals comes, and or the tree where you have a big strong tree trunk, and you sometimes you got to go off the side and branch out for a minute. So I see you doing that, and now you have set the bar at a different level for so many other people that are going to now follow you up or copy what you're doing, which is a good thing. I mean, it really is, because it's a better way of healing or a different way of healing that people haven't thought of up until you came along and showed them that, hey, this is possible, and this is a way that it can be done. If you want to do the traditional way, you know, be my guest, but this is a way as well. And
Yeah.
so, like, I appreciate the things that you're doing, because people at home can look at their journey, because their journey is going to look much different than yours, but also have similar challenges, and rough patches, bullies, naysayers, people that that don't believe in them, that maybe discount what they're doing. But if you can just stay the course and bite one bite at a time, and
Well,
then shift your perspective as you're doing things, the growth
absolutely.
comes on the other side.
And I would say that, so I was talking to somebody, and like, I was not the smartest in school. I was not the best I was not the best at any one thing, right? There was people that were better than me at all different aspects. Pick one, right? But one thing that I was really, really good at was seeking out people who I felt like had the answers, right? And I did that a ton, right? In fact, I spent most of my money that we get in school. A lot of people spend it on cruises, or they go places. I mean, I consider it to be a waste, right? They just waste their money on stuff. I was spending it on investing in myself, right? Spending money to go visit other offices and learn from people who are already successful, who are doing things in a way that I'm interested in doing them as well, right? How did you do that? What are some of the things that I should be wary of, right? What were where you fell, so that I can learn from that and maybe not make those same mistakes. And I did that a ton, and I went out to a lot of people. And so when I was in school, and one of the teachers, for example, would be like, "Oh, you can't. That's not going to be successful. You can't do it like that." I'm like, "Well, actually, I've already visited 3 different offices that are doing it this way. They're successful." So that gave me a lot of confidence too, right? To see um, other people having succeeded despite someone saying it's not going to work. Well, there's evidence I'm looking at. I was in the office, right? I was helping them do things and learn from them. And so I was really good at doing a lot of that, right? Whether that was learning how to adjust, or learning how to, um, study better, more effectively, or learning how to run a business effectively, or how to get a business, like all the aspects of for being successful in chiropractic, where I'm doing, I constantly sought out people all the time, constantly mentors, and ask questions. And I still do that now. People that are more successful than me, right? How did you be successful? What are you doing in this situation? How do you? And so, we were talking about like how I did these things, and that's true. I did finish school, and I did overcome these challenges. But it's super important for me at least, to reach out and ask, "Hey, I'm trying
Yeah.
to do this. How would you have any advice? How should I do this? What do you think about this?" Right? And I found that most people, when you're genuinely interested, really do want to help. Not everybody. There are some people that are just jerks, right? But there are people out there. Did you find people so willing to have you
I
come and
think
learn
he's
from them?
answering it right now. There's people
Yeah.
out there that were willing
Yeah,
to
I
to
absolutely
help.
did. Like, you just have to call. At one point, I wanted to do an internship, and there wasn't any internships available. So I cold called 40, 45 different offices. "Hey, I want to intern. Are you interested in having an intern?" "No." "Okay. I want to intern. Are you interested in having an intern?" "No." Right? I just did that, um, which is not fun, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Um, and then I found one, and then it was great, And so it's all about just like the grit, right? I said, well, someone's going to say yes. Let me just call them all. Someone's going to say yes,
Yeah.
right? And that was a rough example. A lot of it wasn't that tedious, most of my experiences, but there are a ton of people that you can, if you just reach out to, like, hey, listen, I'm trying to do something similar to what you're doing. Do you have any advice for me? People like, yeah, you know what? Let me tell you all about it. Sure.
Yeah. I want to finalize here. We've gone an hour already here. So to honor your time and the viewers, one quick question, maybe there's not a quick answer to it, is what is a giant to you?
Well, a giant is just someone that continues to grow, right? It's really relative, right?
Yeah.
Because there are people that are giants to me, but people that I'm giants to somebody else, right? They're just starting. And
Yeah.
so it's relative. If you just keep growing, then you just become bigger and bigger in whatever it is in life that you're doing.
Yeah. Man, I heard once from somebody, you don't bet on the horse, you bet on the jockey. And and you are the jockey. Like you want to see what's behind Radical Chiro. Well, this is it. This is why it's successful. This is why it grew to what it did. And so this is available for those that are watching too. Like if you're watching this isn't beyond you. It's just a sampling and an example of what's available to you. That's what we try and create with these shows, is to help you see the mindset that it takes to create anything that you say you want in your life. And so, man, I appreciate you. If I were a betting man, I would bet on you because of your resilience, right? The way
Already
you
did. I
things.
placed the bet.
Call Vegas. Let's get
Right.
this done. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, it just occurred to me as you were talking. The last thing is when I was talking about different people are dealt better hands at life.
Yeah.
I look at all the things, and when I talk to like people that know all the intricacies of my history and my life, they're like, "Man, you had a rough go in a lot of these aspects, right?" But I've talked to people also. They're like, "Oh, you're just so lucky that this happened for you." Why can't that happen for me? And it's funny because when you compare that, um, it's different for everybody. Everybody's has ups and downs, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's usually not just all upside. It's like, yeah, you might only see the upside and think how lucky this person is, but
Yeah.
there's usually a lot under the surface, right? Like an iceberg. You see only the tip, and everything
Yeah.
else is underneath that you don't know they had to deal with. Maybe they had, family issues or mental health issues or
Right.
physical disease issues, or who knows what the situation they had to deal with and overcome, right? Emotional turmoil in their lives, or like you only see oh my gosh, they were so lucky that they had this opportunity handed to them. Well, maybe they were lucky in that one instance, but it's not about the one instance of luck. It's about, can you keep moving forward despite all the stuff you're dragging underneath?
Yeah. What others would call the bad luck. Can you keep stepping forward even while that's playing out, you know?
Right.
I would say no matter what your circumstances are, you have the ability. It's that X. You have the ability to change it and do what Amy said here is create your opportunities. So go create no matter what they are. And you made your own luck.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
I learned a lot this show. There's a lot of nuggets hidden in this for those that are watching. Like if you're catching the tail end of this, go back and watch this again because you'll see the pathway that's available for you. And so keep stepping every morning. You might feel tired. Some days step back and pause. It's okay to pause like you did. And I think people forget that too. Just pause for a moment. I'm taking a 2 week break right now. And you just re-engage. There's no quitting in that. It's just a pause. It's a rest. I'm taking a breather and then I'll re-engage.
Yep.
And so just keep stepping. Don't give up. Hang on to your values. Hang on to your vision. Let go of the path. Like let go of how it comes about. That's the big thing. So you guys, I appreciate you. Thanks for being on the show with us. You guys
Thanks
make
for
it a
having
great
me.
day. You're welcome. We'll see you in the next video.
Love you too.
Bye.